Hello, I'm Matthew Gavidia. Today on MJH Life Sciences News Network, the Center for Biosimilars is pleased to welcome Jim Koeller, who is currently professor of pharmacotherapy and member of the Center for Pharmacoeconomic Studies in the College of Pharmacy at the University of Texas at Austin, where he holds the Eli Lilly C.R. Sublett Endowed Fellowship in Pharmacy. Why is it difficult or impractical to keep multiple brands of an intravenous product available in a clinic pharmacy versus an oral medicine?
Well, as I said, injectables in most institutions now have what we call electronic medical record. An electronic medical record in the order sets, we have electronic order sets for all the orders, the actual drug orders. So every order of drug would have its own order set in the computer. And basically, through a pull down, if the patient's ordered to get a drug, you would pull down that order and the drug would be listed. Now, understand all biologics are their own agents. They all have their own codes, their own NDC codes, their own costs, their own reimbursed rate, their own ASP. So every drug we put in an order needs to be coded specifically so that when our billing bills for that product, they're billing for the correct drug with the correct units of drug so that we can get reimbursed for giving that drug. So if we were to have multiple drugs of the same kind, we'd be able to have separate order sets for all those drugs because each drug in the case of a biosimilar or a biologic would have its own code. But then if you're going to have multiple order sets, we'd have to be able to identify which order set goes with which patient. Is it this payer? Is it that payer? Is it this Medicare? Is it that? Who's paying? And then how do you do that? How do you do that in a pull down? How do you keep three different kinds of the same drug in my pharmacy? We have very limited fridge space. We have a hard time just keeping enough of a single drug, much less four versions of that drug. What happens on a Friday or Saturday when you have part-time people covering staffing and a person grabs the wrong drug and gives the wrong drug to a patient? That just causes a mess for somebody that will need to clean that up. So it's really the logistics of trying to make sure patients get the right drug they're supposed to, have multiple products available where you may have to pick and choose who gets which one, and it's done at the time they come in to the clinic to get treated. All that needs to be done in real time, and that just creates a lot of special training, hassle, and it's fraught with making mistakes. A good example of that would be pegfilgrastim. I mean, right now, Amgen's originator, Neulasta, has what's called an on-body injector, an OBI. They have a patch that you stick on to give the drug. All the biosimilars only have the subcutaneous injectable form. So in most clinics, in most hospitals with cancer clinics, they will now have both versions of drugs in those stock. Some patients they'll still want to give that on-body injector to, but other patients you'll want to give the biosimilar to. Well, now just because of how the drugs are made, I have to keep those two versions in our pharmacy. And that can create, again, trying to figure out order sets, make sure the right patient gets the right drug, make sure nursing doesn't make a mistake, pharmacy doesn't make a mistake, who's going to write the order, who checks the order, who makes the drug. So again, the complexity of giving injectable drugs in an institution is far greater than being able to identify oral therapies and bottles that you can keep multiple versions of. A lot easier. Not that that isn't a problem, but it's certainly easier to do than trying to manage multiple injectables.
What is the process for getting a treating institution to approve the use of a new biosimilar? Why does this add complexity to the process?
Well, and I've always said one of my rules is biosimilars are not generics. We've had generics available, generic drugs available for years, decades. And in many cases, pharmacy just switches these out almost at will based off a contract and they'll let people know we got a new generic of this. And it's done routinely, it's done quickly. For biosimilars, it's not that easy. Biosimilars, again, just based off of nature, they're new drugs. They are highly similar to the originator drug. People aren't used to recombinant DNA technology. They don't know the manufacturing. You know, they do know, but they don't know. and there's still some question about how effective are these drugs. It's a therapeutic drug. I'm used to giving this. You're asking me to give something different. So there's lot more complexity to the approval process, to the data needed to approve a biosimilar, proving it, that it's biosimilarity to the originator. And this all falls on the P&T committee. No drug comes into a center except through the doorway of a P&T committee. So P&T committees, in most cases, are probably doing more work to bring in a biosimilar, to do the review, the scientific review, the financial review, the contracting, the who gets, who doesn't get, how many drugs do we have to have. All that work needs to be done. Now, some centers are ahead of others. Some centers are basically viewed now that biosimilars is a pharmacy issue. We don't need to go through all this hoopla again. We've kind of figured it out, so pharmacy can make the decision. But there's still a lot of education that takes place. If you've got a large institution with several thousand employees, you still have to educate the nurses, the staffing, the physicians to the drug, to what's being done, where's it going to be used, where's it not going to be used. And someone has to do that. And most of that usually generally falls to pharmacy to do that training. So it's just, it's at least now, because of the newness of these agents, it's certainly been more complicated than bringing other, general generics into an institutional practice setting.
How might this problem unfold as more trastuzumabs, pegfilgrastims, and adalimumab are approved?
Well, it actually is interesting. If just one biosimilar gets approved, you then can compare that biosimilar to the originator. There aren't any others around, so you know what its cost is going to be. So you can do the financials relatively, you can do the financials, you can figure out the training and all that. But now all of a sudden, if you have two or three coming at once, like with trastuzumab, there are 5 commercially available trastuzumab biosimilars on the market. And we just had 3 come in a relatively short period of time. So now you have anytime you have competing products that are the same or equivalent, I should say, right? You have a scenario that will drive the cost down. Anytime you have more competition, the cost goes down. But it's going down in real time. So when the first biosimilar comes out, they want me to contract. They want to set up a contract that lasts a year for me to use their drug. But if I know there are 2 or 3 others coming very quickly behind them, I'm going to go, no, 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 time out. I don't want to contract now. I got to wait to see what the others have to offer so I can play one against the other and I can try and get the best deal so I can create the best value for the drug I'm going to bring on board. Again, but that takes into account that the drugs are still going to be comparative. You still have to look at manufacturing. You still have to look at all the issues why you pick a drug from a company. But again, in many cases now with multiple providers, it'll put more pressure on us to take our time and maybe not contract initially, maybe wait till there's more competition, till the others come, so we can make a better decision between multiple products and then try and get the best deal we can for our institution. The other problem with that is once you pick a product, people say like with generics, you can bounce back and forth between generics and it's usually not a big deal. It is a big deal with biosimilars. For us to put a biosimilar on board can take months of time, changing order sets, doing the training, getting the approval through P&T, deciding who's going to get, who's not going to get, what are the payers paying. So that can take months to get all that done. Once we get that done, and that's at a big expense, it can cost thousands of dollars for the institution to pay to bring a drug on board. Once we do that, I don't want to switch out the next month and do this all over again. I would like to keep that drug on board for as long as I can, as long as there's a good deal for it, as long as I can make the case that it's still good for us to keep it. So people talk about, yeah, we'll just switch back and forth between these biosimilars. I don't see that happening. It's too complicated and difficult to bring one on board, much less bouncing back and forth. Plus, with biologics and immunogenicity, I'm not sure we want to go bouncing back and forth between drugs too much anyway. So we'd like to pick one and be able to stick with that drug in that company for some period of time, if that makes sense.
What are the potential solutions for these problems? Notably, can you describe how a parity system would work and why this might improve the situation?
Well, as I said, if the insurers can say, yes, we want you to use the biosimilar first. But if they say, then you pick the biosimilar you want and we will cover it, that puts the decision making on, again, as I said before, which agent I want to use, which fits my scenario and my setting the best. I shouldn't say me, it lets the institution pick, and the institution should be the one to pick which agents they use, again, in this injectable scenario. So hopefully, if the insurers can allow parity, it'll make life for us a lot easier, and it also will create less numbers of agents I have to have. If every major insurer picks its own product, and I have three or four major payers, I may be where I'm being asked to have three or four of the same version of drug available. That's not manageable. Having two or three is hard to do. Having more than that is basically, I would challenge most institutions, probably don't want to have to get into that scenario at all. So again, hopefully if the insurers do want to and have us use a biosimilar upfront, instead of the originator, they allow us to pick the agent.
And lastly, is there any thoughts that you want to get across that have not yet been addressed?
I guess just the thought that this is all new to everyone. We're only a couple years into biosimilars, and we're only just shortly. Besides, um, most of them now are going to be, a lot of these are cancer agents. We're just now getting into therapeutic cancer agents, and clinicians are always interested in the drugs that treat the disease versus the supportive care agents. So I think it's just a tincture time for everyone to get trained. Education is extremely important. We still have a lot of people to train that don't actually understand the process, that don't really know recombinant DNA technology. They don't know protein chemistry. They don't understand manufacturing. They don't understand what all needs to be done to make a biosimilar. So there's still a lot of education that needs to take place. So hopefully the industries will be helping us do that, and help us again provide the information to our workers that we need to, so they feel good about what they're doing when they're administering these products to the patients they're taking care of.
To learn more, visit our website at centerforbiosimilars.com. I'm Matthew Gavidia. Thanks for joining us.